Hi, everyone. Great day so far. We're really excited to be able to close out the day with you all. We have a very informative session here. Start off introducing myself, Joe Recker. I lead our platform architect team and demo engineering team. That's an arm of our sales engineering org here at Seismic. And so what that means is I have the opportunity very often to speak with you all. And mostly that's focused on integrations. For the past year and a half, that's been AI-focused integrations. And so, through a lot of those conversations, pick up on the themes, the topics, the questions that everyone's asking. How does Seismic fit into my AI strategy, as an example? Or maybe more personally, how can I use AI in my role? How can I make myself more efficient? How can I get more out of my hours in the day? Or maybe it's a force multiplier. How can I impact change in my organization? A lot of us have talked about that today. And so we're going to unpack that, and we're going to start with one of the terms that we hear a lot in the industry, and I'm sure a lot of you will be familiar. This represents headless. Yeah, it's a Lego, but yeah, headless. So what does that actually mean? What does headless mean? It's definitely a buzzword in the industry. Headless, in my opinion, is the shift of value and utility from the user interface to the actual API or the plumbing under the hood. Let me explain what I mean. User interface, like your login screen, or your personalized landing page after you're authenticated, or your click path to generate a document or to share a digital sales room like we talked about earlier, right? Where that's going, the power of that button click of generating a document or creating a digital sales room, that is an example of headless architecture. So we think about button clicks, and then the other major piece that I think of is events. So as an example, a new opportunity is created in my CRM, right? That's an event. Or my customer just viewed content in my digital sales room. That's an event, right? So those two integral pieces tied together, they allow for a lot of opportunity in the integration space, a lot of automation as well. And with AI in the forefront, that blows the doors open as far as possibilities go. So I do like the Lego guy. But I think for you New Yorkers in the room, we need to change it up a little bit, right? So this kills me a little bit because I'm a Celtics fan. But initially, I pulled this because I thought it was timely, given the win over the weekend. But then I started to unpack it a little bit more. Jalen Brunson, pretty fitting character because A, he does a lot for the team. He can drive the paint. He can drain it from three. He can distribute the ball, right? So changing environments and still being able to deliver on that utility. And I guess the last bit is they won in San Antonio. So again, a change in the environment, similar to what we're seeing with this migration of users and enterprises leveraging the Claude interface, the GPT interfaces of the world to drive their business. And so I'll digress on that. But where we're going to go next is sort of the themes that we're seeing in the industry. We're going to start at a high level, and this slide might look familiar, but we're trying to understand what is happening. And AI is the new interface. We're seeing that pretty much across the board, at least aspirationally, and we'll talk about that a little bit more later on. And I think it's for good reason, because if you look at what Claude can do, what GPT can do, any of them up here on the screen, like the corpus of knowledge that these models have digested is incredible, right? You think about any publicly available data, it's digested through these models. It's organized and retrieved in the flow of a conversation. So I think about it, the barrier to entry for learning has never been lower because of these models, right? But what's missing is all of your business context, right? What we talked about a little bit earlier. Rob alluded to it, Anthony alluded to it. All of the business context that exists in your systems, your applications, your proprietary systems, that historical data that may be 20 or 30 or even more years old, right? That's important, and that drives actual execution and outcomes. So I guess what we're seeing, the harsh reality, if you will, is a fragmented reality, right? I actually, my old boss posted something on LinkedIn the other day that included some Gartner analysis, and they predict that over 40% of AI initiatives are going to fail and be basically retired by the end of 2027. And I chalk a lot of that up to this missing piece in the middle. You could also consider escalating costs, right? Another term that we're hearing a lot is token maxing. I think it's a real thing. I mean, I've heard some funny news about that. But it's true. I mean, we have kind of a token concern, specifically for the Claudes of the world. And so you need to be strategic about A, how you're using these tools. Is it cost effective? B, can you easily realize the value of what you're building, right? And then C, who's going to maintain it? This isn't something that you can set up and forget, right? It needs to be iterated on. It needs to be maintained. And so we'll get into a little bit later what a successful AI initiative looks like and deployed in production. Excited to walk through that. Before we do that, I'll just sort of summarize, which is, AI doesn't replace all of this underlying business context and governance, but it does have to work across all of it. I mentioned this earlier, but just to put a slide to it, AI alone is not going to create revenue outcomes. Again, Rob talked about this a little bit earlier, and where I want to go specifically is when AI gets it wrong and the consequences that scale. I think that's important because I would say the customers I'm working with, the initiatives that they're building out, most of it is what I'll call middle to middle, meaning human in the loop. It's not fully end to end. You probably need 10% of human involvement up front for sufficient prompting, sufficient sourcing of data to drive your workflow, those types of things. And then on the tail end, after AI's completed its job, some sort of validation, some sort of review to make sure that there's no hallucinations, content drift, et cetera. And so that's, I think, a realistic view of where we're at. But it's not going to stay like that for too long. I could see 6 months, 8 months, a year down the road, fully autonomous workflows. And honestly, there's some of you customers in the room here are on the very bleeding edge and have some production level utilities and agents that are deployed. I applaud you for that. We'll talk about the right strategy for doing that, and happy to hear how you've architected those. But this is important. I'm going to pause for a minute. We're talking about all AI, and I still have my notes written down on a piece of paper, so please bear with me. Rob also talked about revenue leakage earlier, and I like that term. I hadn't heard that before. And I'll break it down a little into a few different categories here. The inconsistent messaging, right? Lower win rates and longer sales cycles. We all know that exists if there's inconsistent messaging. Revenue leakage, right? Increased legal risk and brand exposure. I've heard some anecdotal stories. We did some interviews in the industry about sellers generating pitch decks directly out of Claude and then realizing, hey, there's a case study in here I'm actually not supposed to share. Probably should wipe that out, right? So I mean that's real, and it happens all the time. And just as an aside, we talked about AI being non-deterministic and document creation. While it can be easy, there's a lot of room for error because it's non-deterministic. And I always come back to where we cut our teeth as a company, which was New Pitch, if you all recall. It's document automation at scale. And I'm sure a lot of the financial services folks in the room can relate to LiveDocs, but I contrast non-deterministic AI and document generation with hard-coded business rules and data mappings. Right, so if you think about it, you're building out a pitch book, for example. You want the sources or the data sets that are going into that pitch book to be accurate, valid, timely, and non-deterministic way of generating outputs is absolutely prone to error. And then arguably the most concerning, right? You roll out this massive AI initiative. It's a big investment for your organization. And then end users get their hands on it, and they're like, this sucks. I can't trust it. I just generated this thing, and now I can't do anything with it. So that's a major one. And so we're here to talk through how exactly to resolve that. All right, so this is what I see a successful AI architecture. And it starts at the top layer. And we've talked about some of these tools on the top layer for good reason, very powerful. You'll notice Seismic on the top layer. And we've also talked about end user personas, meaning sellers, client-facing teams, advisors, wholesalers, et cetera. Now, it's important to note that extensibility and headless, while that's very valuable and part of the strategy, we know a lot of our users are logging into the tool, they're taking care of content audits, they're reviewing attribution of content to their deal cycles. These are things that are UI native and that we likely want to keep in place. We also have support for extended data sources, which we can talk more about. But Seismic is tackling this by persona and by tools in which users live in. We've actually been doing that for a very long time. Like I think of our Salesforce integration that's existed for about 15 years, right? We want to live in our users' flow of work. And so that's another piece of the extensibility play. Then we get into the second layer down, which is orchestration. I think this is an emerging layer. I will give some credence to the agent forces of the world or the Claudes, Copilots. They're doing some of that orchestration already. I think of actions and tools that exist in Agentforce config or like Claude skills you all are probably familiar with. Copilot has some instructions. But what is this actually doing? It's actually routing your user query or your request to the appropriate underlying application. So if I'm a seller and maybe I got a new account, maybe I need to take some steps before I meet with my client to understand, A, what do they do? I might go to the public internet to do that. I might look at a 10K filing or something like that. Then I might ask a question that pulls on my CRM, like, what history do I have with this account? Was there a prior rep covering this account? Did they ask about any particular products that they might want to ask about more? And then you get into the product specifics, like, hey, how do I pitch this thing? How do I sell it? So you're calling in Seismic in that case. And you might be, go down the list, a few other systems that are applicable. And so the orchestration layer allows you to route all of those requests to the right underlying application. It's very important. And I would say that's an emerging space. We're seeing some vendors crop up out of nowhere. We're also seeing some integration platform as a service tools like the Power Automates, the Workatos of the world, coming into that space as well. And we talk about the actual plumbing, which is what we see as the industry-leading protocol, model context protocol. Maybe 2 years ago, I think in November, Anthropic released this protocol, and it was a very emerging protocol. Frankly, it still is. But a lot of companies in our space are joining on, and it seems to be the trendsetter at this point. So we've invested heavily there. Speaking with someone earlier who was asking about the MCP tools, we've invested heavily. We'll continue to invest heavily there. And so that is back to the headless concept that we talked about earlier. MCP is the way for LLMs to speak to one another, for applications to speak to one another in a common language to get the results you want. So as an example, if I'm in Claude and I want to build a pitch deck, I can do all of that natively through Claude and Seismic's MCP connection, which is pretty powerful. Go back to the headless comment. Why do I need to jump into another application and fill out a form just to be able to get that output? I have all my context about the account. I have all my context about the engagement I'm about to have through my conversation chat. So let's just pass that into MCP and generate the output that we need, just as an example. And then all the underlying systems that exist underneath. I'm going to wrap up shortly and hand it over to Chris to dive into some more product specifics. But before I do that, I just want to call out that this this AI revolution and the MCP stuff that we've talked about, it's moving incredibly fast. What we're seeing, boots on the ground, working with customers, working on AI initiatives, we're seeing brand new authentication methods. And not new to Seismic, new to the entire industry. So we're very excited about where we're headed. Looking forward to working with you all coming out of the session. Chris, I'll pass it to you.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Joe. Nice to talk to you all today. Work closely with Joe, but I'm more on the product side, so I lead our AI platform and search capabilities here at Seismic. Now, Joe took you through sort of the AI architectural model. We see customers at all various stages, various interfaces. Where we really see Seismic leaning in AI is really around how we can provide our customers and your users with that governed context in order to make your AI systems work well. So how can we ensure that they have access to the most up-to-date permissioned content, marketing messaging, so if you have slides, like speaker notes, how can we also extend that to have additional context for the deal? So for example, let's say someone goes into Claude or even our interface and asks, like, give me the best asset for X situation. Seismic as a system needs to know that information in order to give you the right content. We need to know who you've spoken to in the past there, what did they like, what did they not like, some information about your opportunity, your deal. So really what we're trying to do behind the scenes, we're going to talk more about this at Shift, but we're working towards it now, is how can we help you orchestrate this in terms of providing the right context in your flow of work. So this could include the content context, as well as prior meeting transcripts, CRM information, and packaging that together in a permission compliance-aware way into your system and flow. Now, what this looks like, if we go to the next slide, Joe, is, Joe showed you the overall sort of stack slide. This one goes a little bit more in depth into how we're hooking in to the different systems. So we know that your users are going to operate in many different interfaces. So if we think of the different personas, as Joe said, your salespeople, like the overall mantra we're hearing to echo what Rob said before and others, you have maybe 30 or 40 tools your sellers operate in. You want to consolidate that down. Great, we're going to support you in any interface you're in. We have integrations and extensions into Agentforce, into Microsoft Copilot. We support Model Context Protocol. That's all well and good. But our focus really is at the bottom to some degree in how do we give you that trusted context foundation so you find the right information, personalized slides that are on brand, for example. And also, how do we provide that context into flows that are relevant for your sellers and your neighbors? Some of them will exist in Seismic. You saw some today with Anthony demoing, Ali demoing. Maybe you're going to use it to help prep for a meeting, to help find content. We realize a lot of you are going to operate your sellers through other platforms, but there are certain workflows where you as an enabler, a marketer, or an admin makes a lot of sense to do it in Seismic. If you want AI to help you build out a page, build out a lesson, audit your content proactively, those are workflows and functions we're actively investing on in our interface. But we really want to see that functionality in the interface that makes the most sense for you, right? I don't have it in the slides here today, but we are building out different AI augmented flows to help you understand content gaps, content overlaps, and duplicates. These are through things like we're calling our librarian agent. We have different agents coming out for pages and lessons. We can share more context on that afterwards with you all. For the seller, now if we go to the next slide, Joe, we understand that you all have different strategies where you want your sales to operate. Some of you want them to operate in Seismic. That's great. I own a lot of the capabilities in the Seismic platform for how they operate through AI means in terms of chat, voice mode, and different architectures. But we really want to build it in a composable way. So no matter where your users are, we want to be able to bring the same functionality baseline in that governed content and context layer. So we have a bunch of different agents. I know it's like Agent Palooza. But we have different agents or really tools or functions to help you do things like find the right information. So if we hypothetically go through a meeting preparation flow and post flow, you may need to find as an advisor or a seller or someone in support or services, find the right information or asset. Great, Seismic has tools and functions for that, both available through an agent we have as well as through MCP. We have agents focused on meetings to provide that meeting context, to look through all of your prior conversations, your CRM information, and layer that with the content and context. So if you're getting ready for a call, great, here's the document or the asset we recommend you use in that call. We can do that in our application like Ali demoed before, or we can do that through Claude, ChatGPT, through different tools we have. We also then have agents to help you as enablers understand how your content's being used, what's actually driving the deals. So we have a bunch of analytical agent capabilities where you can just in natural language ask questions off your data model. Say, how is this content being used in the field? Is it driving engagement? And then we have other agents to help your go-to-market individuals practice. So we have different role-play agents that you can do after a lesson to see are they retaining information, or before a meeting. So you can instantiate that like before a call if you want to be ready. And then we have different content personalization flows for you that are augmented with AI to help you build presentations that kind of build off of our core live decks technology that can use some of your governed templates for that. But all of these functions are composable. We will have native workflows in Seismic for you to use them, but we understand you may not want to operate through those interfaces. We're going to go into that in a second. But in those interfaces, we want to make it work in your flow of work. So you saw before with Anthony and Ali, great, you want to do this in Claude? We can do that. You want to quickly add something to a DSR, create a live send? We can do that in your flow. But we're going to continue investing actively in these 4 places on the next slide, Joe, where we have our own chat layer in Seismic, right? Every application is moving more towards organic chat, whether that be through text or voice. We want to make this the main modality that people operate through in Seismic. It's going to make it simpler for sellers to use the platform, but also for enablers. So if you want to do certain tasks, like create a lesson, you want to create a new program, you want to ask how your program is doing, just do that through the chat. You don't need to actually know how to navigate around as much. And when you are in a certain place of the application, it'll be contextual. That's great. We're going to have a bunch of different agents or tools or functions to help you in your flow of work. Great, we'll make them composable no matter where you are. We'll embed the assistants in our application where it makes sense to help you do things like generate descriptions on documents, tags, and metadata. But we'll also meet you in your tools and your flow of work in things like Claude, ChatGPT, Agentforce, Copilot. So our overall strategy is really to meet you where you are in a headless way. As Joe said, headless but not brainless. And really operate around a couple different mantras. We really want to differentiate on giving you your governed content and context in your flow of work that you can trust. And we really want to make sure that your go-to-market individuals know what to say and how to say it, right? So here's the context they need in this deal cycle with this individual, and how do they say it so you make sure they stay on brand, and you can get feedback on actually how this content and context is performing in the field. So that's our overall strategy. Joe and I are up here for any questions you have on the AI front, or if you're building out different architectures, how we can help integrate into those flows. Thank you all very much.